me that just seems totally irrelevant. The smearing of it, which seems to be really catching on with Trump's base, this whole notion that you see distrust in advance of the election by attacking a method that in the past has actually been quite good for Republicans. So all of that is happening. We're talking about this. We're repeating the lies. Drudgery of coping with it, which Trump has zero interest in and sort of abdicated leadership in. And we turn this very fraud and check out some other sources. It's not at all clear that it's really going to convey. It's not what they're doing. And then the last thing I'll say is then Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook shows up to say,
died, you would be banned. There's no doubt. You would get banned. Even you. Even John Dickerson would be banned. These Scarborough tweets are so crazy and wicked and evil. And even reliable conservative media are disgusted by it. And yet, he will not be banned for it. Should he be?
Well, not even banned. They haven't even deleted the post. I mean, let's just start with, some small steps toward dealing with...
This young woman asked specifically Twitter to take this down because of the emotional pain he said it caused him. It feels like we have just a live question that needs to be discussed in the public square. And then the third speech and whether it's effective. Just on the first point, it really does bear. On the second point, what's interesting to me about whether you can have a public policy conversation backfire in that if something isn't fact-checked, people then assume it's more true. That the Wall Street Journal had a very powerful story this week about how basically there was an internal effort at Facebook to look at what we all know, which is that the method of getting people to pay attention to Facebook feeds on and requires division to create distraction, to create engagement, and that has a corrosive political effect, a corrosive effect that the Russians took advantage of. And that basically Facebook looked at it and then basically didn't do much in terms of their own internal processes. So that's a failure on their part. But there's also, I think, atrophies if you rely, this is not so much in this specific case, but it would be
a bunch of companies that are run by lefties. Like if you went to Silicon Valley, the overwhelming majority of people who work at places like Facebook and Google and Twitter are Democrats and are liberal Democrats. Like overwhelmingly. I think even probably Mark Zuckerberg would describe himself that way. Jack Dorsey would describe himself that way, I imagine. They certainly hold progressive views around social issues, and they have built machines that serve much more effectively people on the right. And I am very, or maybe it's that the people on the right have weaponized them much more effectively. And I'm interested, Emily, because I know you've thought about this a lot, about how that happened. What is it that is in division, whereas the left is not built on division? The left is built on much less potent emotional calls, or is it something else? Is it conservatives are more willing to law effectively on these platforms?
That's interesting. I mean, so first of all, I don't really see a world in which there is a ton of hypocrisy, right? And we all live in worlds of hypocrisy, but the inequality in the Valley, in the Bay Area in general, is just staggering. And the idea that free speech, that freedom is going to triumph and trump every other value, that's the ethos of Facebook and a lot of the social media platforms, right? I mean, the whole birth of the internet is about you want information to be free. And it's been a long, long time to have any real reckoning with the consequences of that, which are serious bullying, harassment that follows. That is...
the internet is just a version of that. I'm not sure, obviously, if you view this from the right, because the right now is a bunch of different stuff, because there are conservatives, then there are conservatives who support Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is not a conservative in lots of important ways. The popular will, as the president expresses it, and as he was applauded for expressing it by his supporters in the elite media on the conservative side, the idea of the roaring crowds at the rallies was something that conservatives in the 50s would have been shocked at. The sort of mob should have the influence over public policy and the direction of the country. The other thing is that the adhesion within the Trump online community seems much more sticky than have somebody equally, two different people to take certain information and gig people so that they keep being addicted to it. Information isn't being free at all. You're acting as the kind of most pernicious directly against. And on in the original conception was not something leaders were supposed to then just follow. They were supposed to be informed by it. But the whole job was to go against the public will when it was telling you something that you, in your heart, disagreed with. So we've gotten completely on the wrong end of understanding that, too.
That's such a good point, John, and it reminds me that, so John Stuart Mill is often invoked as a kind of absolutist on free speech, but in fact, if you read the rest of the passage in which he's talking about that, he expresses real concern about this kind of notion of everyone basically screaming at each other, and also he was talking very much about